She was already gone by the time I turned around, but the note she'd pressed into my palm was still there, damp from my grip, 4 words in blue ballpoint pen. He's done this before. I should back up. 3 months earlier, I'd been the kind of woman who believed in signs. I believed the universe sent people into your life at exactly the right moment, that loneliness had a purpose, that patience eventually paid off. I was 31. I owned a small floral design studio in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. I had a good life. A quiet one, but good. Then my husband walked into it, and I stopped believing in signs entirely, because the ones I missed were everywhere, and I just didn't know how to read them yet. His name was Hudson. I met him at a charity gala in February. The kind of event where men in expensive suits make small talk over past appetizers and nobody actually talks about the charity. He wasn't making small talk. He was standing near the bar, looking at a floral centerpiece I'd designed, really looking at it, tilting his head the way people do when something surprises them into paying attention. I told him I'd made it. He said it looked like something that understood grief. I didn't know what to do with that, so I laughed. He didn't. He just asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. By April, we were inseparable. By June, we were married. A small ceremony at a vineyard in Woodinville. Just us and a judge and a bouquet of garden roses I'd tied myself. My business partner Stella was there. His mother was there, elegant and still, watching from the second row in a charcoal blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My mother had died 2 years before. There was nobody else. It felt romantic then, that smallness. Later, I understood it differently. The note happened on a Thursday in September. Hudson had surprised me with a spa day at Reverie, this glass and marble place downtown near Pike Street Market, because, and I remember this exactly, he said I'd been working too hard and deserved something soft. I'd laughed at that too. Something soft. He had a way of saying things that sounded like poetry and felt like being held. We were in the side-by-side manicure chairs, my hands soaking in a warm bowl, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, gave me that apologetic smile, and said he'd be back in 5. Work thing. Always a work thing. He kissed the top of my head and walked toward the lobby. The woman in the chair beside me leaned over the moment he was out of sight. She was maybe 45, dark hair pulled back, wearing a fleece zip-up that didn't fit the Reverie aesthetic at all. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying recently or hadn't been sleeping. She didn't say anything. She just pressed a folded square of paper into my wet hand, looked me directly in the face, and mouthed something I couldn't quite read. Then she stood up, left 2 20s on the armrest, and walked out through the side door. I unfolded the paper under the edge of the towel in my lap, 4 words in blue pen. He's done this before. Below that, a phone number. I stared at it. My first thought was that she had the wrong person. My second thought was that she was unstable, that this was the kind of thing that happened in cities, that strangers were strange. My third thought, the one I shoved down immediately because I didn't want it, was that I had seen that phone flicker in his hand before he smiled at me, that the smile had been a half-second late. Hudson came back 4 minutes later, slid into the chair beside me, and reached for my hand. I turned my palm over so he couldn't see the paper I'd crushed into it. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, and I smiled the same way he did. I didn't call the number that night. I told myself I wouldn't call it at all. Instead, I made dinner and watched a show we both liked and lay next to my husband in the dark and listened to him sleep with the steadiness of a man who had nothing on his conscience. The bank alert came the next morning at 7:14 a.m. "Your account has been flagged. A temporary restriction is in place. Please contact your financial institution." I thought it was fraud. Someone had skimmed my card, maybe. I called the number on the back of my debit card while I was still in my robe, coffee going cold on the counter. The representative who answered was polite and careful, which is how I knew before she finished her sentence that something was very wrong. According to our records, your account was placed under a temporary hold at the request of a joint account holder, effective yesterday at 6:18 p.m. I didn't have a joint account holder. We show that you authorized joint access and durable power of attorney on May 14th of this year. May 14th, Napa Valley. Our honeymoon. I remembered the afternoon. We'd been on the porch of the rental house, reading. Hudson had reached for the tablet on the side table and said he needed my signature for something quick, a direct deposit setup for our joint household expenses. The screen had been bright in the afternoon light. I'd signed with my finger without really looking. He'd said perfect and kissed my temple, and I'd gone back to my book. I asked the representative to read me the exact document name. She paused, keyboard clicking. Joint Account Access Agreement and Durable Power of Attorney Authorization. Signed electronically May 14th, 10:47 a.m. I sat down on the kitchen floor. I didn't plan to. My legs just stopped. By noon, I was standing outside my own condo building, watching a woman carry a box of her things through the front door. She was maybe 26, apologetic, showing me a lease agreement on her phone. The landlord had met her there 2 days ago. The building was listed under Vane Property Holdings, LLC, a company I had never heard of, authorized agent my mother-in-law. The ownership transfer on my condo, the one I'd bought with 7 years of savings before I'd ever heard the name Hudson, had been filed with King County 6 weeks after our wedding. I called Hudson. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I drove to the studio on Melrose because it was the only thing left that was mine, unlocked the door with the key that still worked, and sat at my work table surrounded by half-finished centerpiece orders and tried to breathe. Stella called at 2:01 p.m. Her voice was the kind of flat that happens when someone has been rehearsing what to say. "I need to ask you something directly," she said, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Always," I said. "There's $180,000 missing from the business account. The transfer was authorized 3 days ago. Your digital signature is on the form." The room went very quiet. "I didn't sign that." "The bank confirmed it, sweetheart." She didn't call me sweetheart when things were fine. "They have the timestamp, they have your authorization credentials. The money went to something called Petal Meridian LLC. I don't know what that is. Do you?" "No." "Then you need to tell me what's going on, because my lawyer is telling me I have to protect myself here." I pressed my hand flat on the work table. The wood was cold. He did it. My husband forged my signature, the same way he forged my signature on a power of attorney on our honeymoon, the same way he transferred my condo to his mother's company without my knowledge. "Stella, he is taking everything. He is taking it all in a way that looks completely legal." The silence on the other end lasted too long. "I know how that sounds," she said finally. "It wasn't agreement. It was the sound of someone who'd already decided." She changed the studio access codes that afternoon. I found out when I tried to go back after dark and my key card didn't work. That was when I called the number on the note. She picked up on the first ring. Her name was Ramona. We met at a coffee shop on Broadway the next morning, a narrow place with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasting beans and old wood. She was already there when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug, looking like someone who had been waiting a long time for a version of this conversation. "My sister's name was Cleo," she said. She said it the way people say names that have become something heavy over time. "She met your husband 4 years ago. They were married in 7 months. 8 months after the wedding, she died." I watched her face. What happened? "Mount Rainier, the Paradise Trail." She went hiking alone on a Sunday morning, which anyone who knew Cleo would tell you made no sense because she was terrified of heights. She'd been afraid of heights since she was 8 years old. Ramona's jaw tightened. They said she lost her footing near an overlook. Blunt force trauma consistent with a fall. Case closed. My coffee was getting cold. I didn't touch it. Before she coffee at the counter. Before she died, Ramona continued, she'd transferred her savings account to a joint account he controlled. She'd signed away her half of the duplex she owned with a cosigner in Bellevue. She'd taken out a life insurance policy. He was the beneficiary. For $900,000. She opened her phone and turned it toward me. I've been collecting this for 2 years. The screen showed a folder of photographs. Cleo, young, laughing, at what looked like a picnic. Cleo in a wedding photo. A death certificate dated November 2020. A property transfer document. A life insurance payout confirmation to a Hudson K. Vane. There were others before Cleo, Ramona said. I found 2. One in Oregon, 2016. Car accident, brake failure. The other in California, 2013. Drowning. I can't prove it, but the pattern is identical. He finds women who own things. Women who are a little alone. He marries them fast. Then the paperwork starts. I thought about February. The gala. The way he'd stood at my centerpiece like a man who understood grief. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. I did. 3 times. Without a direct connection between the deaths, without proof of intent, they said it was circumstantial. Her voice was even, like she'd stopped expecting anything different from that answer. The only thing I could do was watch. And when I saw you, at a florist trade show in July, walking beside him, letting him carry your sample case, I started following. I had to wait for the right moment. The spa, I said. He books a spa day when he's activated the financial phase. I think it's a way of keeping you calm and public and placated while the accounts are being locked. He did it with Cleo. She looked at her hands. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you sooner. I sat in that coffee shop for a long time after Ramona left. I thought about Cleo at an overlook on a trail she never should have been on. And I thought about the note pressed into my wet hand, and I thought about what it meant that I was sitting here and Cleo wasn't. Then I opened my laptop and started looking. Stella had sent me an email 2 days ago in the middle of all of it, titled FWD, Authorization Documentation. Please explain. She'd forwarded me an entire email thread trying to prove I'd authorized the transfer myself. She hadn't realized that by forwarding it, she'd given me everything. The original email in the chain had been sent from an address I didn't recognize, admin@vanprofoldings.net, to a third-party financial services firm. It contained instructions for the forged transfer, a scanned copy of my signature lifted from a prior document, and attached to it, almost as an afterthought, a PDF with a file name I had to read twice. Vane Asset Acquisition Summary, Petal and Thread. I downloaded it. 12 pages, my name at the top, my business, my condo, my savings account, my share of a jointly held vehicle, all listed with estimated values, transfer timelines, and a final line item I had to read 4 times before my brain processed it. Life insurance policy, beneficiary H.K. Vane, $500,000. Policy activated March 2024. Projected claim window Q4 2024. He had taken out $1.5 million life insurance policy on my life in the first month of our marriage. The projected claim window was right now. I forwarded everything to the FBI tip line at 4 p.m. with a subject line that said, "Active fraud and potential homicide. Please read." At 6:23 p.m., a reply arrived from someone named Agent Cho. 2 sentences. "We've received your submission. Can you be available for a call tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I slept in my car that night, parked in a lot near Green Lake, because I had no home to go to, and I wasn't sure which of my friends Hudson had already talked to. It was cold. I kept rereading the document on my phone until the battery hit 12%, and I forced myself to stop. The call with Agent Cho lasted 40 minutes. She was direct, careful, and said two things I needed to hear. The first was that the FBI had already had Hudson under surveillance for 14 months in connection with wire fraud involving multiple property transfers in the Pacific Northwest. The second was that the document I'd received through Stella, because I'd received it through a legitimate forwarded email from a business partner, not through anything I'd obtained unlawfully, was admissible. We were waiting for a victim who could give us the inside of the financial mechanism, she said. You've just handed us the inside. His mother is involved, I told her. She has access to the Commercial Real Estate Licensing Board for Washington State. She's the one who filed the ownership transfer paperwork. A pause. That aligns with what we've been seeing on our end. Another pause. She caught herself because I'd asked her not to use my name on the call. Are you somewhere safe? I looked at the fogged-up windshield of my car. Green Lake was dark outside, a few joggers passing under the lights. I'm working on it. 3 days later, the Seattle Small Business Coalition held its annual awards luncheon at the Westin downtown. I had been nominated for Emerging Business of the Year. The nomination had gone in back in July, before any of this, back when I still had a studio to run and a home to go back to and a husband I believed in. I still had the invitation. Nobody had thought to uninvite me. Hudson was planning to attend. His mother, too. A show of supportive normalcy while the paperwork finished closing around my neck. Agent Cho and I spent 2 hours the night before going over exactly what would happen and when. I didn't sleep that night either, but for different reasons. The luncheon started at noon. The room was full, 200 small business owners, city officials, a few local press, round tables with white linens and small centerpieces, none of them mine. Hudson was at a table near the front, his mother beside him in the same charcoal blazer she'd worn at our wedding, both of them looking like people who had already won. When they called my name as a finalist, I walked to the podium. The award presenter handed me the microphone. The room applauded politely. I had a thank you speech in my pocket. I didn't use it. Instead, I plugged the USB drive into the podium's AV port and asked the AV technician, who was Agent Cho's colleague, had been there since 10 a.m., to please put the presentation on the main screen. The room went quiet in a specific way, the kind of quiet that comes when people sense something is happening that wasn't on the program. The first slide was simple, the summary document, my name at the top, the life insurance line item in red, projected claim window, Q4 2024. I said, into the microphone, my name is on that document as a target, not as an author. My husband is in this room. His mother is in this room. They have spent the coffee at the counter. Sin spent the past several months systematically transferring my assets into accounts they control, and I want everyone here to understand that this is not the first time they have done this. The slide changed. Cleo's name, her death certificate, the property transfer records Ramona had documented over 2 years. This woman was his wife before me. She died on a hiking trail she was terrified of. The case was closed as accidental. I heard a chair scrape. Hudson was standing. His face was doing something I hadn't seen it do before, the careful composure slipping, just slightly, at the edges. Cassidy, he started. My name, I said into the microphone, is not Cassidy. The doors at the back of the room opened. Agent Cho walked in with 3 other agents in FBI windbreakers, badges out, already moving toward the front. His mother stood first. She had the instinct of someone who had done this long enough to know when to run. She made it approximately 4 steps toward the side exit before an agent stepped into her path and said, very quietly, "Ma'am, please don't." Hudson didn't run. He looked at me across the room with an expression I can only describe as curiosity, like I was a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve itself. And then he looked at the agents and said nothing at all. He sat back down. He put his hands on the table where they could be seen. I kept my hands on the podium. They were shaking, but I kept them there. Agent Cho stood at the center of the room and addressed it with the practiced calm of someone who had done this before. The investigation, the wire fraud, the evidence, the life insurance policy. 200 small business owners sat very still and listened. A reporter in the third row had her phone out, recording. Ramona had been sitting in the back row since 11:45. She'd figured it out. She told me later, when I stopped returning her texts and started responding in single words. She'd come because she wanted to see it herself. She'd told me afterward that when she heard her sister's name in that room, she had to grip the tablecloth to stay in her chair. That she hadn't cried, that she just kept thinking. Finally. They walked Hudson and his mother out through the lobby of the Westin in handcuffs at 1:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in September, past the flowers at the entrance desk. Not my flowers, but close enough, and into the gray afternoon. I gave my statement to the FBI for 4 hours that afternoon. Then I called Stella. She'd been watching the news coverage on her phone when I called. She picked up before the second ring. "I believed him," she said. Her voice sounded like it had been wrung out. "He sent me the bank reports himself. He said you'd been struggling, that you'd been hiding financial problems from me, that he was trying to protect the business on your behalf. I believed him. I know. I changed the access codes. I know." The silence stretched, then she said, "I'm so sorry. I know that too." The business license was restored within 2 weeks after the King County filing was voided. The condo transfer was contested and overturned within 30 days. The woman who'd moved in was understanding about it, in the way people are, when they realize they've been a pawn in something much larger than an apartment dispute. The bank account had the restriction lifted the morning after the arrest. I stood at an ATM at 8 a.m. and watched my own balance appear on the screen and felt something I can only describe as the return of gravity, things falling back to where they belonged. The life insurance policy was voided by the insurer immediately upon federal notification. Hudson was indicted on 7 counts: wire fraud, forgery, theft by deception, and 3 counts related to the financial schemes around the deaths of his previous wives, cases that were being reopened in Oregon and California with the new evidence the FBI's search warrants had produced. His mother faced 4 counts of her own, including conspiracy and abuse of her licensing authority. Their trial is pending. Ramona and I started the Clio Fund 3 months after the arrest. It's a nonprofit, small, still finding its footing, operating out of the back office of my studio on Tuesday evenings. We offer free consultations for women who suspect financial abuse, help them document what's happening, connect them with attorneys who will actually listen. Stella sits on the board. Agent Cho spoke at our launch event in January. There are 3 women registered in our first intake cohort. None of them are in a situation as extreme as mine was. I hope it stays that way. I hope we find them early enough that it does. I still design flowers. I still open the studio at 8 a.m. and make coffee and spread paper on the work table and think about what different blooms are trying to say to each other. I think about Cleo sometimes, a woman I never met who was afraid of heights and who died anyway on a trail above a drop. I put white lisianthus in the arrangement I made for the Clio Fund's first event because someone told me it means gratitude and appreciation, and I think she deserved both from me specifically, a stranger who is alive, because of what Ramona did with her grief. I don't believe in signs anymore, but I believe in notes. I believe in women who sit in the chair next to you and press something true into your hand even when they're shaking. I believe it can save your life. It saved mine. If there is one thing I want you to take from all of this, it is practical and unglamorous, and I mean it with everything I have. Do not sign anything on a tablet without reading every word. Not on your honeymoon. Not over wine. Not when someone you love is sitting close to you and the light is soft and you feel safe. Especially not then. Safety is not the same as being safe. I learned the difference the hard way. You don't have to.